We believe our readers would want to know if Google is a company they can trust to provide them neutral information. Hi everybody, my name is Petr Svab. I've been a reporter with the Epoch Times for about a decade, and today I'm going to talk to you about my article in this week's edition. Google doubles down on deceiving customers about its political manipulation. It's been a story that's been very hot this week. Project Veritas, this conservative-leaning nonprofit, released information that substantiated the long-standing allegation that Google infuses its political preferences into its products. And now we have quite a bit of proof of that. The core piece of evidence is an internal Google document that shows that the company created this concept of fairness that it tries to promulgate in its products. What they mean by fairness is that they identified some historically marginalized groups, and when content on the internet seems to be putting these marginalized groups in a bad light, they will try to correct for that. They will try to instead highlight content that, in their view, is more fair to these groups. The problem is, they didn't tell their customers. They didn't tell us that they're doing this. They're basically infusing their political preferences, the preferred worldview, the policies that they would like to see, how they would like to see the world to look into its products, and they're trying to nudge their users towards this worldview without telling them. That's a political manipulation. And this document gives a very specific example. It says, for example, if you search on Google for CEOs, and the results will show you pictures that are predominantly pictures of men, this would be so-called algorithmic unfairness. Because what Google would like to see is more women CEOs. And so Google would try to correct for this unfairness. Even though it's not the fact, it doesn't reflect the reality, but Google would like to see this kind of reality to happen, and so they would modify its products to reflect their preferred worldview. There was a Google executive who was caught on hidden camera saying that indeed, we try to provide fairness, but we don't want to provide it to, she said, it's not my job to provide it to everybody, but only to these groups that we deem are historically marginalized. Groups that we think, have been more in power or more privileged. No, we're not interested in providing fairness to those. In fact, she went even further and said they're training their algorithms to see if the 2016 election happened again, if the outcome of the election would be different. She also criticized the calls of some politicians for breaking up Google over antitrust issues. She said that that will make it worse because the resulting smaller companies would be incapable of taking on the task of, quote-unquote, preventing the next Trump situation. Now, we tried to ask Google for their response, and Google didn't really address the information that was put forth by Project Veritas. But two Google executives were questioned by lawmakers during two congressional hearings. And basically what they said is that Google is completely politically neutral and that they simply don't agree with the evidence that was put forward. Now, this is a crucial topic, and we've been following it very closely, because there's been research put forward that shows that even just arranging the sequence of search results on the internet can sway voters to one side or the other. So Google has the power to affect the upcoming 2020 election in a major way. And we believe our readers would want to know if Google is a company they can trust to provide them neutral information. Another topic that I've been following for quite some time now deals with some problems with the child welfare system. Apparently, there are a lot of parents out there who believe their children were taken away from them by the government unfairly. I read a story on some problems within the system, specifically in Philadelphia, where one councilman had an allegation raised against him by the Child Protective Services agency in the city. And he was outraged because, as he put it, the evidence only showed the opposite, that there was absolutely no abuse. So he started to look more into it, and he found a case of a grandmother who saved 2 of her grandchildren from an abusive home, and somehow the system turned against her, and she was herself accused of abusing one of the children. Now, the government didn't just remove the children from the care of the grandmother. The government even tried to put the kids back in the care of the person that the children accused of sexually abusing them. Now, this is a heartbreaking story, and I went to Philadelphia to meet with this woman and get an in-depth sense of what she went through, and we're going to run the story in the next week's edition. I think what this story really illustrates is the danger of the government abusing its power, because these social workers have enormous power, and it's very difficult to hold them accountable. Since I started to do research on the problems in the child welfare system, I realized how it's connected to our motto of truth and tradition, because it really highlights the problems with government trying to play the role of a family, and how oftentimes it actually ends up making things worse than the problem it was trying to solve to begin with. I hope you'll enjoy the next week's paper, and stay tuned for more.